So just wonderful to be with you all. I don't want to waste any time with introductions. I've got some great friends here on this panel who have some incredible information to share with you all to inspire you and to let you know that we are making progress and there's ways that we can really be impacting gender parity in the workplace. So without further ado, let me start with my good friend and partner, Caroline Codsey, with a question that is really probably, you know, that a lot of the participants are wondering, what is Women in Governance's Parity certification? And what makes the Parity certification such a powerful tool to close the gender gap?
Well, thank you so much, Nicole. First of all, I just want to thank everyone on the call for being here today. I want to thank Dr. Taras for her amazing words. As usual, I'm a big fan, as you know, Daphne. And I'm wearing the blue, the Ukrainian blue today, also to keep in mind what is happening in a corner of the world that is near and dear to my heart. I spoke in Russia 2 years ago, and I'm in huge shock to see what is happening right now, especially having myself grown up through the Lebanese civil war. I can really empathize with the Ukrainian people. So getting back to our topic today, very important topic. So Women in Governance was founded in 2010, and the goal was really to support women in their career advancement, have them access major decision-making bodies. And the comment that Daphne made about being asked to sit on nonprofit boards and doing charitable work, I mean, all of us, we get that all the time. And a lot of women are still waiting to be tapped on the shoulder to access, you know, the major banks or the major insurance companies. And this is where it's really important that women have a role at the table as well. So the work that we've been doing since 2017 really is to not only support the women, which we've done since 2010, advance their careers, until we realized that mentoring them, training them, supporting them, sponsoring them was not enough, because they would go back into workplaces that had been traditionally built by men for men and were struggling to advance their careers. So we felt that it was necessary to actually work on corporate culture, on modifying policies, on ensuring that everything within the organization was put in place to give equal opportunities to men and women at every level of the organization. And that's a very important point, that we're not just focusing on boards or executive committees. We want to ensure that organizations have a strong, robust female pipeline of talent that can progress all the way to the top. So we were fortunate enough to have the support of McKinsey & Company, who helped us build this Parity certification that has had a huge impact within corporate Canada and corporate America as well. And Angela Olden will speak more to that in a few seconds, and so will Jen Denby. We've been very fortunate to see the immense growth despite the pandemic. In the past year, more than 70 organizations have joined this movement, because they see that if you don't take the time to measure your gaps, you're never going to be able to actually close them or positively impact them. And many organizations just say to us, oh, we are working on closing the gender gap in the workplace, but what does that actually mean? So once they go through this process, they receive a very detailed questionnaire that gives them, very detailed report that gives them benchmarking, best practices, recommendations. And the goal is for them to actually follow them and resubmit the following year so that they can keep moving the needle further. And so that's extremely important. And when I think of all the younger generation and all the students that are listening to us today, we really want to shape your future, and we really want to make sure that the workplaces in corporate Canada are actually welcoming to the bold young women that are completing their MBA at the Ted Rogers School, and it's also why, and Angela will speak to that a little bit later on. I don't want to steal her thunder, but it's also why the Girl Scouts of the USA see the value in aligning our initiatives.
So thanks so much, Caroline. Great overview of the Parity certification. And just so that everybody knows, that's the group that I lead at Women in Governance, and we work really hard to make sure that it's topical. It changes every year or every few years to make sure that we're continuing to move the needle to sustain gender parity over time. So Now, Angela, your ears must be burning because you're the person who's going to share with us how the Girl Scouts identified the need to be moving into this space. So, you know, when we think Girl Scouts, we don't necessarily think the business world, but as you'll share with us, the Girl Scouts has everything to do with the business world. In fact, the power decisions out there in the world. So can you describe what the Fair Play Equal Pay Initiative is and what prompted the Girl Scouts to launch this initiative and with the support of women in governance?
Thank you, Nicole, and good morning. And good morning to my fellow panelists and all of our attendees. I'd like first to thank Ryerson University for inviting me to participate in this very exciting panel on gender parity. And on behalf of the Girl Scouts, I'd also like to thank Women in Governance, our partner in this very important work, as well as Willis Towers Watson, who's our partner on the business end, as well as in this work as well. Now to the question. So first, let me address Girl Scouts' role and prominence in the business world. Our girls, many as young as 5 or 6, manage and run the largest girl-led entrepreneurial venture in the world, the Girl Scout Cookie Program. And through that program, the girls learn the critical business skills of money management, business ethics, goal setting, decision-making, and people skills. In addition, Girl Scouts is developing the workforce pipeline for the future and for all industries. You should know that 84% of Girl Scout alums hold a leadership role at work, and 42% of Girl Scout alums hold management positions. So why did we launch our gender parity initiative, Fair Play, Equal Pay? Girl Scouts' mission is to build girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. We instill in our girls that they can be whoever they want to be. We give them the skills that they need to succeed, and we champion their ambition. Therefore, we felt that it was our responsibility to ensure that the business world that many of them will enter is fair and equitable, affords them all of the opportunities that are available to their male colleagues, and compensates them fairly and equally. And as we all know, that doesn't exist today. So in addition, at Girl Scouts, we believe in sisterhood, justice, and fairness, and we've pledged to become an anti-racist organization. Girl Scouts is for every girl, and more than 443,000 girls are from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds. So our initiative focuses on promoting diverse female talent and addresses the intersectionality between race, ethnicity, and gender. In a little while, I'll be able to talk about more details about the initiative, but I first wanted to share with you why at Girl Scouts, we believe that this is something that we need to do. Thanks, Nicole.
Fantastic, Angela. And as all of you have just heard, Angela shared with you one of the key components of the work that we do, intersectionality. The sad fact is that as we move the needle on gender parity, we are not seeing all women moving at the same pace. And so there needs to be a particular focus on underrepresented women who are not getting the opportunities to shine and achieve their full potential. So Jen, just so that everybody knows, Willis Towers Watson has been a partner of Women in Governance and a Girl Scouts. Willis Towers Watson has supported us in our gender parity certification in Canada for a number of years, and they have also certified they're a certified or a parity certified organization. So very singularly prepared and equipped to participate in this conversation. So Jen, you also have the unique experience of looking at the world globally. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. But you've partnered with us for many years, and frankly, since its inception. And how does the certification help Willis Towers Watson close the gender gap? How does it practically help you?
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for having me today. I feel, honored to be talking with such an esteemed group of women, of powerful women. And it's very hard to follow Angela, isn't it, when she talks about the Girl Scouts like that. So yeah, very happy to be here. So Willis Towers Watson have, as you said, Nicole, we've been involved with Women in Governance from the start of the certification. And really that's because those values just absolutely aligned. It's something that we take very seriously. It's very important for us to close that gender gap within our organization. Willis Towers Watson is a sort of a mix of insurance broking company, and we also do a lot of consulting. So quite kind of traditional financial services. When we first partnered with Women in Governance, we were at the top of our organization, very male dominated. We still are to some extent, but we've made progress, and we've made progress through partnership with organizations such as Women in Governance. And for me, I wasn't actually involved in the very start of our partnership with Women in Governance, and really have come to this in the last year. And as I know, as you want to ask me later on, Nicole, about, we've done the certification in Canada and we've done it in the US. But I think for me, it's, it's a real investment for any DE&I practitioner or HR function to take part in this. So I think it shows real commitment. But the value isn't just about, giving the information over. It's really challenging to us. When I led the certification process within our company last year, really challenged me to be thinking, the questions I was being asked, it's like, oh, well, what are we doing in this space? And making a note, even before I'd got the feedback and the report, I started to identify some of our gaps. I also started to think about, they're going to like this. This is going to be good. I think this shows good progress. And that makes me really proud of the work that we've been doing. But I think it's the detailed report, and we've just got our report. So I've been diving into it in the last couple of days. And as Caroline said, it's that advice that you're giving us as a company, which is just so valuable for us.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jen. So just that you all know, we really, we've seen in the number of years that we've been doing the certification, and Jen just spoke of it, organizations literally, as they're doing the certification, are inspired to bring about change as they are answering the questions. So if they prompt organizations to implement policy and programs to sustain gender parity and attract and retain women and encourage women to achieve their full potential. So that's the real impact, direct and practical impact that the certification has had for organizations.
And Nicole, can I say one quick thing? Because
sure.
People might think that the clock in the background of Jen is late. I just want to, or advanced. I just want to mention that we are such a global movement that while I'm in Montreal and Nicole is in Toronto, Jen is in London, and Angela is in New York. So I just wanted to make that clear.
So true, so funny. But yeah, this is a global issue. The fact of the matter is, gender equality is not unique to any one country, nation. It is something we are seeing across the world, and it needs to change. And the pandemic has even further amplified that issue. And hopefully we'll get a chance to chat a bit about that. So Caroline, why should organizations certify year over year? Because our certification is a yearly process.
Well, Nicole, there's more than 96% of organizations that actually come back year after year. And, they don't do that because they just want to waste their time. They do that because they see the value of recertifying. They see the value of continuing this movement. It's a path. It's not a destination. And it's a long walk to journey to achieve parity. As you mentioned earlier, also, Nicole, we get more and more demanding from our organizations. So we rank them from bronze, silver, gold to platinum. And those organizations that are at the platinum level could very well say, well, my work here is done and I don't need to continue the journey. In fact, year after year, if you don't update your policies, if you don't keep your eye on the ball, you could drop. This has happened. 90% of our organizations actually progress year after year because they follow, the instructions. Some will progress more than others. Some will progress, but will still remain within the same bucket because you do need to, you need to get at a certain level of points to be able to move up from bronze to silver to gold and platinum. And actually on March 8th, we will be unveiling the 10 organizations that have achieved platinum this year, and the more, out of the more than 70 that have applied. So look out for the press release, and on our website they'll all be unveiled. And so this journey is just going to be so much easier for them as they are supported by an external third party like Women in Governance, alongside consulting partners such as Willis Towers Watson, who are able to give all the best practices, the latest trends, the latest research on how to achieve their goals.
So true, Caroline. So just so that everybody understands, and I'm sure this is not news to those of you who are participating today, the fact of the matter is you can't sit back on your laurels in this space. The world will constantly be pulling us back to gender norms. And so we need to, until gender norms change to what they should be, which is equality and equity, we have to constantly be striving and pushing forward. So as Caroline said, we've seen organizations that unfortunately have not continued to invest in their programs, and they have slipped back. But the majority definitely invest in this and move forward. So Angela, back to you. What has compelled organizations to sign up for the Fair Play Equal Pay Initiative?
Okay, thanks, Nicole. So first, let me tell you more about the initiative. So our initiative focuses on our vendor partners and our investment fund managers. We're asking them to commit to achieve 30% diverse women leadership and like pay for like work by the year 2030. So let me break down that first goal for you. Increase the number of female leaders and decision makers. So although many gender parity initiatives focus on board representation, ours is focused on leaders and management. We use the EEOC levels to ensure that we're consistent in our assessments. And although gender parity is 50%, we chose 30% as our goal is to have one that we believe would be inspiring, but also achievable. And given that only 5% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women, it would be quite an achievement to get to that 30% diverse women leaders. We chose the year 2030 as one we could see in the not too distant future, while also giving us the ability to celebrate the progress of our partners along the way. So we're not just wanting to celebrate them getting to that highest level, which for us is 4 stars, but their progress to get there. And again, as Carolyn said, sort of assessing year after year. Our second goal addresses why we chose to first launch this initiative with our vendor partners and investment fund managers. We need to ensure that we're spending and investing our precious girl dollars with organizations that share our values and are aligned with our mission. The third goal, as I mentioned earlier, is that we want to provide public recognition for the results and the progress of our partners. And lastly, we want to amplify our efforts and voice in the relevant national dialogue on the issues of gender parity and pay equity, and galvanize our 50 million Girl Scout alums to support the advocacy, this initiative, and the organizations that participate. The first step in the process is for vendors partners to sign the Girl Scouts Gender Parity Fair Play Equal Pay Pledge. We have almost 50 organizations from very diverse industries who've signed the pledge to date, and they're celebrated on our website. We are then asking the partners to sign up for the assessment that's being administered, again, in partnership with Women in Governance. And from this, our vendors receive a Girl Scout certification of 1 to 4 stars. We're also asking them, as Carolyn talked about, to redo this assessment on an annual basis to mark their progress. Partners receive very detailed reports that highlight their strengths and where there are gaps. And Women in Governance also offers them for a fee enablement tools and services that can truly address the specific gaps at their organization. So why are partners compelled to participate? It's important to note that although we're asking them to commit to this initiative to align with our Girl Scout mission and demonstrate the support, the initiative is designed to provide organizations with a cost-effective and essentially turnkey program to address the issues of gender parity and inclusivity, topics that are of critical economic and societal importance. There are also issues that are the focus of shareholders, clients, and employees. But most importantly, our partners recognize the direct benefits to their business and their bottom line by adopting our pledge and participating in this assessment and certification. The benefits include attracting the best and the brightest talent, supporting an inclusive corporate culture, the single most important factor for women to achieve career advancement, retaining top female talent and increasing employee engagement, and gaining visibility as a company that's aligned with Girl Scouts, a top 10 brand with a network of 50 million alums and great credibility in this area of gender parity. Research proves that companies that are highly gender diverse have 53% higher returns on equity, 42% higher net margins, 27% higher value creation, and earn 41% higher revenues. So as you can see, these are all very compelling reasons.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks so much, Angela. So Jan, you head up EDI at Willis Towers Watson globally. And as Caroline said, we're at the four corners of the world right now. So you've certified with the Fair Play Equal Pay Initiative with the GSUSA, and you've done the WIG Canada certification for the last 4 years. So do you see any differences in the issues and the obstacles that you're confronting on the path to gender parity in the two different regions? And what differences do you see globally?
Yeah, so I think my answer to that is sort of yes and no, and let me try and explain what I mean by that. So, I think in North America, there's a lot of similarities when I look at our business and I look at representation in our business and I look at some of the challenges that we're facing. And then if I take those, what I hear as well from our female colleagues, and that's really important to us as well, is to really listen to our female colleagues, and understand them and how they're navigating their careers and what we can do to support them. And that feedback can be very similar here in the UK. It's actually when you get outside of those two regions, I think that some of that varies. That some of that is probably due to the size and the shape of our company, where in some countries we've got much smaller operations, and therefore we need some more mobility perhaps to give those opportunities to people. I'd really like to think though that with the world now, we've seen so much change over the last 2 years, some of it hopefully for the better in terms of virtual working. That might help us actually break down some of those barriers. I think the other thing I would say is actually we didn't do this exercise here in the UK, but looking at the questions that we were asked for the 2 certification exercises in Canada and the US, that's really helped me from a global perspective think about what we can be doing differently. And just actually some of the things I learned as I was gathering some of the evidence required, I came across things that we were doing in both of those countries that I thought, hey, this would be great in Australia. We need to do more of this here. So actually, just as a little internal exercise, it was a great piece of work for us, identifying some of those good practices, also identifying some of the areas where I think we've got opportunity as well, and thinking about different parts of the world where I might have other programs running. And I think the other thing I'd say is actually just within Canada and within the US, our business is very different, and we see when I look at gender representation across the company, it doesn't just differ by geography and by country, but it also differs by our lines of business as well. So as a company, we need to be able to adapt our programs and our practices, for colleagues, regardless of where they're sitting within the company, to make sure that that's an equitable experience.
so great. I love actually you sharing the fact that this work that you've done in 2 regions has actually prompted you to look at other regions and do that comparison. And in fact, we're going to be doing our gender parity forum shortly after. We always do a gender parity forum after the certification. And I think that's something that our global organizations and partners will appreciate hearing, because that's definitely one of the collateral benefits of the certification. So thanks for that. So now let's have a chat amongst us girls. One of the questions that we always sort of grapple with is, what will be the indicator to us that we've achieved a corporate culture that will sustain gender parity? So I'm opening up that question that I'd like all three of you to answer. Maybe we can start with you, Jen.
Okay, I think for me, for me, it's not just about having female representation in the C-suite. It's about having equitable female representation across all roles that make up that C-suite. So we quite often will see, more women in marketing or HR roles, and perhaps less in some of our key P&L roles. And for me, I think that indicator of when I can sit here and say we're doing a good job is when I see that.
Absolutely. So Angela, what about you?
I can't wait till we get to the day where we don't have to count 30%, 50%, that it's just natural and it's there, and it's whatever the number is, it doesn't matter, because we know we've got the best diverse talent there is.
Absolutely. Caroline.
Well, I would say that, to this day, we still see that there are some very highly male-dominated industries. And we're holding an event on June 14th, a Women in STEM event on June 14th, with some prominent women from engineering, tech, et cetera, who are going to be speaking. And we know how difficult it is for these, for organizations in these industries. There are still some organizations that are struggling to attract, and we need to start much sooner. We need to start in schools and even in daycares, and making sure that our little girls understand that they can be anything that they want to be. No, they don't have to go to marketing or HR. Yes, they can be a CFO, and yes, they can be a CEO, and yes, they can be an engineer, and they can be a rocket scientist, like actually CEO of the Girl Scouts of the USA. So, I think that's where we need to put more focus on ensuring that, the way the parents and the teachers are speaking to little girls is different. The entire society needs to shift this paradigm. And I want to quote this French philosopher who used to say that the day that we see gender equality in this world is the day that an incompetent woman is named at an important role.
I love that quote. It's one of my favorites, because it actually is so true. I mean, anyone who's a woman, and all of you have achieved senior leadership roles, and any women who have achieved senior leadership roles knows 2 things. One, you've had to be better, stronger, smarter, faster, brighter than a lot of the time your male counterparts. But also, the moment that there's a slip up, it's a mountain. Whereas the equivalent slip up from a male colleague may have been accepted. And so that absolutely would be a hallmark of having achieved gender parity. And to Angela's point, when we reach a point where we don't have to have this conversation anymore, it's just the way it is. That, I just hope it's in my lifetime, but who knows? Now, I know we want to take some questions, but we had such an interesting conversation during our prep call that I did want to have a last conversation. We can't not talk about the pandemic. So, and one of the things we did talk about as a panel was, the impact of the pandemic has actually shown us that hybrid work and working from home is a possibility, but it's not without its impact on women. And so I just like for us to have a little chat about how can we guard against, this impact to women? How can we turn it into a positive for women? and looking at it from the lens of both what women need to do and also what employers need to do. So Jen, again, let's start with you.
Yeah, and it was a great discussion we had when we were talking about this. And for me, it's something that's keeping me awake at night at the moment, actually, as a DEI professional, thinking about the future, hybrid working, and just the impact that that may or may not have on the underrepresented talent within our organization. Take my own situation. I've got 2 kids. It's pretty easy for me to work from home. It is easy. But what am I missing if I don't go to the office? And how do we counter for that? How do we counter for, I just don't want to be out of sight, out of mind, Jen. And therefore, within our organization, we're really thinking at the moment about proximity bias and what I'm calling intentional inclusion. How do we make up for those moments that when a meeting had finished, you might have had an extra 30 seconds, 5 minutes even, with somebody outside of the room as you walk to the lift. They are really important interactions. Just people that you bump into in the office and the conversations you have. I went into the office earlier this week for the first time since September. And I think because I'm looking at these resources and materials for the company as a whole, I was really conscious about all of those little interactions and how we need to just raise so much more awareness about the importance of that. I think this year's theme for International Women's Day about break the bias has given us a platform within my organization to really talk about bias and how we can interrupt it, how we can identify it, and definitely to tell people more about proximity bias.
Great. It's wonderful to hear that your organization has recognized that this is a real risk for women and you're taking action. So anyone who's from another company who's online, please take note. So Angela, thoughts?
So first, I think we need to recognize that the pandemic has exacerbated this gender parity issue. More women than men have left the workforce, many of them permanently because of their other responsibilities. And more women have been, because of the industries that they work in, especially more service industries and lower level paying jobs, more women have been laid off. So we sort of need to set the new normal and then go after that new normal. But when I look at the work that we're doing, when we went virtual and everyone is 100% virtual, meetings are very balanced and everyone has an opportunity. We need to be very intentional when we're going to go back hybrid. We need to be very intentional about how we, and very much what Jen was saying, how we handle meetings and how we handle interactions, because I know before the pandemic, when we used to have hybrid meetings, we were not very good about being inclusive of people that weren't physically there. So we need to be very intentional about how we handle, whether it's technology or HR policies, but it needs to be across the board.
So true, Angela. Caroline and I have had this conversation so many times. So Caroline, if you could share some of your thoughts.
Well, I worked for Toronto head offices for about 20 years of my career, being based in Montreal. So connecting virtually to a meeting is something that I've had to do and gain experience on how to make myself heard through a meeting where everybody is physically together and I'm on the line. At the time, we didn't even have that many video conferences, so it was often just on the phone. And the issue I see today is the fact that return to work, well, let's rephrase, return to the office, because we've been at work all this time, probably more than ever, actually. Return to the office means hybrid for most people. I think that's what we all want, and I see huge benefit to it. At the beginning of the pandemic, I thought this is great for women, because for a lot of them who were wondering if they were going to opt out of work, well, working from home was a good solution. Then we saw that their plate got fuller and it was more difficult for them because they're still doing 2 to 3 times the number of chores and taking care of the kids, etc. But now the danger that I see with the return to the office is that it's going to be a personal choice. Do you want to go once a week, twice a week, 4 times a week, more? And I think clearly that more men will want to go back to the office potentially 5 days a week, and more women will choose to go to the office once or twice or 3 times a week. So the danger is, are important decisions going to be made during a Zoom conference or once the laptops are closed and the men are amongst themselves in a meeting room. So we're going to have to make sure that our voices are heard no matter what, and that organizations, as they're doing performance evaluations, for instance, they don't value face time more than they value the output and the work, because we know very well that if you look at the content of the work and the details and the accurateness of the work, women are at the top. But if we look at how navigating political politics in the organization, networking, talking about your achievements, well, men seem to be better at that. And so, who's going to be thought of, who's going to be top of mind when the next promotion comes up? So what I want to tell organizations is to be very cautious of these unconscious bias. And I'm glad that this is the theme of this International Women's Day, and hopefully, corporate leaders will pay attention. But I also want to tell women, you don't go to the office to work. That you can do from home. You go to the office to actually participate in the corridor conversations. You go to the office to talk about some of your achievements that you may not be sending an all company email to talk about. So think of the importance of your personal branding, of your personal relationships, of how career advancement is achieved. And it's not only by doing a stellar work, it's also by networking with the right people and spending some time around the water cooler as well.
It couldn't be truer words that have been shared. Folks, all of you who are just finishing up your MBA, that you've just heard a real pearl of wisdom. And I also want to share with you that, in fact, Caroline touched on something that we actually evaluate in the Parity certification. So we actually look at organizations, what they're doing to make sure that they are aware that face time is not a feature of performance. And so it's actually something that we evaluate. We get organizations that think, why are you spending any time on this? Well, because it has a material impact on women's careers. So actually, Donna, I'm not sure if you have any questions for the panelists.
Would the audience like to start putting questions? We have time just for a couple of questions. Maybe I'll just get the ball rolling by asking Jen or Angela, have you noticed any difference in applications, for job seekers now that you're on the Parity program?
Oh, I'll go first. It's not something that we've asked people, so it's hard to, give you a really hard and fast answer there. But what we do hear from people applying to our company is they're interested in what we're doing much more than applicants were, 10, 15 years ago. They are really going to our website and looking at diversity and inclusion and what we're doing, and is this a company that they want to come and work for? So I think it will make a difference.
And we are taking on at Girl Scouts, our initiative really focuses on our vendors and our partners, but at Girl Scouts we have a huge undertaking for diversity, equity, inclusion, and racial justice. I don't know if that's changed our applications, but I will say that our employees are highly engaged and are looking for results, information, activities all the time. And so they're very, very interested in what we're doing and what we're going to come out with.
Great, thanks for answering the question.
And if I may add, Donna, I think it's, all research demonstrates that an organization that focuses on diversity is going to have more engaged employees. And this is actually turning into so many other benefits, because more engaged employees, but also better innovation, because you have people from, diverse backgrounds, diverse perspectives, better at penetrating new markets, better at creating new products. Also, something that investors look at, whether institutional investors or private investors, clients look at. So most of our clients actually, toot their horn when they receive their certification, because they want all key stakeholders to know that, whether you come and work for this organization or whether you buy its products or, whether you invest your money there, this is an organization that actually understands the benefits of diversity and gender equality at every level of the organization. And Angela had shared some really interesting statistics earlier on that demonstrate that, it's just the smart thing to do.
Exactly. Okay, we do have one question, and we'll have to make this the last question. What support systems do you have in place to support women, or what support systems should be in place to support women?
Who wants to take that question?
So, for example, the person asking the question said that their workplace implemented a 4-day work week, for example.
Maybe, I'm the moderator, but since I lead the Parity certification work, maybe I can help with some of the initiatives that we look for. One of the things that we look for is a flexible work arrangement. We look for an arrangement that gives a woman the opportunity to flex her work, is empowered to make decisions so that they can manage their workload in a way that allows them to meet their personal obligations, et cetera. So those are the kinds of things that we look for. But we also look for a culture around those flexible work arrangements, because a lot of organizations have these policies in place, but there's a hidden agenda underneath that. Is, the people who take these arrangements don't seem to advance in their careers, or they're looked at askance, et cetera. So what we look for is not just that you're putting these policies in place, but that you're actually creating a culture that actually celebrates that these programs are actually enablers for your organization. And so the same goes for maternity and paternity leave. We look for leaves that allow men to take their roles so that women are able to progress their careers. And so we all know that women will stay at home if their partner has to work. But if their partner is given a leave that allows them to stay home for a portion of the maternity or the parental leave, it allows a woman to maybe, focus on their career or take some classes that enable them to propel their career. So we look at a number of initiatives of that nature that not only focus on women and leadership development programs, et cetera, for women, but we look at programs that are enabling men to take some of the load off so that women can advance their careers.
Exactly. And, this is just the first session of the conference, and so many issues have come up. Now I'm going to call upon our conference co-chair, Sean Sedletsky, to say some words of thanks.
Thank you, Donna, and thank you, panelists and everyone. What a great discussion. I'm sure all of you have some key takeaways, starting with the idea that in order to close some of these gaps requires measuring them in the first place and creating benchmarks and best practices. And that's something that all of us can play a key role in, and really why we're here today. A couple of things that I noted were that we learned that the Girl Scouts is truly a leadership development program, and shows that the things we're talking about today don't just start when you complete your MBA, but need to be an area to focus on at all ages and demographics. And beyond looking at geographic differences and global organizations, as Jen pointed out, it's important to identify parity across all lines of businesses, which in a way kind of circles back to what our own dean said in her opening remarks about the types of work and roles on boards that smart, successful women get offered, possibly due to some of the unconscious biases that our panelists discussed, versus those that their male counterparts might. So with that, on behalf of Donna, Dr. Donna Smith, my co-chair, all of our colleagues, thank you, Angela, Caroline, Jen, and Nicole, for sharing such an engaging conversation. We're making a contribution to the Black Business Fellowship through the Digital Media Zone here at the university in appreciation of all our guest speakers for taking time to join and inspire us today to reimagine women in leadership. Thank you so much.